Hello there, bitch. Are you comfortable right now? I doubt it. Wrists and ankles chained, gagged, probably blindfolded. You are disoriented and scared too, I would imagine. Perfectly normal under the circumstances. For a little while, at least, you need to get your shit together and listen to this tape. It is very relevant to your situation. I'm going to tell you, in detail, why you have been kidnapped, what's going to happen to you, and how long you'll be here. I don't know the details of your capture because this tape is being created July 23rd, 1993, as a general advisory tape for future female captives. The information I'm going to give you is based on my experience dealing with captives over a period of several years. If, at a future date, there are any major changes in our procedures, the tape will be upgraded. Now, you are obviously here against your will. Totally helpless. Don't know where you're at. Don't know what's going to happen to you. You're very scared. Or very pissed off. I'm sure that you've already tried to get your wrists and ankles loose. No, you can't. Now you're just waiting to see what's going to happen next. You probably think you're going to be raped, and you're fucking sure right about that. Our primary interest is in what you've got between your legs. You'll be raped, thoroughly and repeatedly, in every hole you've got. Because, basically, you've been snatched and brought here for us to train and use as a sex slave. Sound kind of far out? I suppose it is to the uninitiated, but we do it all the time. It's going to take a lot of adjustment on your part, and you're not going to like it a fucking bit. But I don't give a big rat's ass about that. It's not like you're going to have any choice about the matter. You've been taken by force, and you're going to be kept and used by force. What all this amounts to is that you're going to be kept naked and chained up like an animal, to be used and abused anytime we want to, any way that we want to.
If you're listening to this, you're probably shaking right now. Maybe you're still trying to understand what you just heard. But that recording was real. Every word. Every threat, every instruction. It was played for women who woke up in darkness, strapped down, unclothed, confused. They weren't watching a horror movie. They weren't hallucinating. They were inside what one man proudly referred to as his toy box. Inside that trailer, in the New Mexico desert, was a collection of tools built not for repair, but for ritual. Not for pleasure, but for power. The man behind it didn't need to chase his victims. He convinced them, tricked them, drugged them, and once they crossed the threshold of his world, they ceased being people. He made sure of it. He told them exactly what was going to happen to them, step by step, and then he pressed play. He built his world with precision. A surgical chair in the center of the room, mirrors placed above so his victims could see what he was doing. Detailed notes, step-by-step logs, hours of footage, decades of practice. And no one noticed. To outsiders, David Parker Ray was a quiet man, a local mechanic, a former park ranger, the kind of person you forget was in the room the moment he walks out. But inside that trailer, sealed off by steel and soundproof foam, he lived out a fantasy so disturbing, so calculated, that even seasoned investigators had to step outside for air. He didn't do it once, or twice. He did it for years, with help. The desert around Elephant Butte is silent now, but the silence lies, because somewhere beneath that dust and sand, people believe there are answers. People believe there are bodies. And those who survived, the few who made it out, will never forget the sound of that tape or the man who stood beside it, watching them as it played. This is not a case of impulse. It's not a story of rage. It's a system that was built, tested, and refined. It's the story of how someone with a smile and a clean shirt hid one of the darkest chambers of cruelty ever uncovered on American soil. You're about to hear what happened when someone finally escaped, when police entered the trailer, when the mask came off, and what was behind it changed everything we thought we knew about serial offenders. His name was David Parker Ray. The world knows him now as the Toy Box Killer. And if you've never heard this story before, brace yourself, because there are no screams in this part of the case. Just silence. Cold, sharp silence. If you're new here and these are the stories you believe deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel doesn't tell horror stories. We tell the truth. And today, we're telling one that should have never been buried. Before the trailer was ever discovered, before the chains, the mirrors, the recordings, there was a woman named Cynthia Vigil.
I tried fighting him, and his girlfriend came out of nowhere and shocked me with a cattle prod. I was taken in Elephant Butte Lake, where they had torture chambers. I was totally naked, tied up to the headboard and footboard of the bed. He played a tape. He starts off by saying, "Hello, bitch."
She was 22 years old, tough, street smart, and like many young women on the edge of society, she'd learned early that the world didn't often hand out second chances. Albuquerque, New Mexico, 1999. Cynthia was trying to survive. Some nights she found shelter. Some nights she didn't. Some nights she walked the street. Some nights she didn't come back. She was no stranger to risk, but nothing could have prepared her for what was waiting. March 19th, she was picked up by a man in an unmarked vehicle. He told her he was an undercover cop. He showed her a badge, spoke with authority, kept his eyes steady. She believed him, enough to get in the car, enough to go quietly. He told her she was under arrest for solicitation, told her he was taking her downtown, told her not to make a scene, but he didn't take her to the station. He drove her 150 miles south to a town called Elephant Butte. By the time Cynthia realized the truth, it was too late. She was already inside the trailer. The next time she opened her eyes, she was naked, cold, strapped to a table, and a voice was playing from a tape recorder. That voice, calm and clinical, explained exactly what was about to happen to her. David Parker Ray called it procedure. He called her slave. He told her she was now property. Cynthia's story is powerful not because she was a victim, but because she survived. She was the one who broke the silence, the one who got out. But she wasn't the only one who'd ever been there. In 1996, 3 years before Cynthia, there was another woman. Her name was Kelly Garrett. She was 22, newly married, independent. She'd just had an argument with her husband one night and decided to walk to a friend's house to cool off. She never made it there. That night, Kelly was drugged, and not by a stranger. She was handed a drink by someone she knew, Jessie Ray, David Parker Ray's own daughter. Jessie offered her a lift, laughed with her, lured her. Kelly awoke inside the same trailer Cynthia would later find herself in. The same table, the same restraints, the same ritual. She was kept for 2 days, then suddenly released. Bruised, confused, unable to remember anything clearly, Kelly returned home. Her family thought she'd had a breakdown. Her husband accused her of cheating. No one believed what she said. The police didn't even file a report. She was left to think maybe it had been a hallucination, maybe a nightmare. It wasn't until 1999, when Cynthia escaped, that Kelly realized she had lived through the exact same nightmare. Word for word, tape for tape, torture for torture. These women had lives. They had families. And they had warning signs, the kind that often go unnoticed. Cynthia's mother said she hadn't heard from her in weeks. Kelly's parents said she changed after that weekend in 1996, withdrawn, paranoid, silent. How many others were out there? Women who escaped but were too afraid to speak, or too damaged to even understand what happened to them. For years, no one connected the dots. For years, David Parker Ray operated with near invisibility. Victims vanished, reappeared, or never came back at all. The system dismissed them, blamed their lifestyles, called them unreliable. But on March 22nd, 1999, everything changed. Cynthia found the keys to her restraints. She waited until Ray left the room. She ran, naked, bleeding, still partially chained. She ran until she found a mobile home and pounded on the door. The woman inside let her in, called 911, and just like that, the door to the toy box opened. For the very first time, Cynthia Vigil's escape didn't just save her life. It blew open a case the town of Elephant Butte didn't even know existed. It was March 22nd, 1999, just before 3 p.m. Cynthia had been held captive for 3 days. 3 days of restraints, drugs, tape recordings, and something worse, the complete erasure of identity. That afternoon, David Parker Ray left the room. He thought she was fully secured. He thought she couldn't move, but something went wrong. He'd left the keys nearby, and she found them. She managed to unlock her wrist, then her ankle. Then she stood. She was bleeding, bruised, still chained by the neck, but she moved, slowly, quietly, her body shaking with every step. She opened the door and stepped into the light, her first moment outside in nearly 72 hours. Wearing nothing but a dog collar and a length of chain, she sprinted toward a nearby mobile home. The woman inside, a neighbor named Darlene, opened the door, saw Cynthia, and froze. Then she reached for the phone, dialed 911. What happened next would expose one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history. Police arrived within minutes. Cynthia could barely speak, but she told them where she'd come from, who had done it, and what was inside the trailer. When investigators approached the property, they noticed how quiet everything was. The trailer sat parked just feet away from Ray's main home. It looked ordinary, dusty, closed up, like every other trailer in the area. But when they opened the door, the silence broke. Inside was something they'd never seen before. A narrow hallway, blacked out windows, soundproof padding along the walls. The interior smelled of sweat, metal, and something else, something foul. In the center of the room, a large custom-built gynecologist chair. Leather straps attached at the wrists, ankles, and headrest. Overhead, a mirror mounted to the ceiling, positioned so that victims could be forced to watch. On one wall, there were hand-drawn diagrams, illustrations of restraint techniques, pain points, and psychological control methods. On shelves, dozens of surgical tools, speculums, forceps, clamps, items typically found in operating rooms, not inside a trailer in the New Mexico desert. Tucked beneath a desk, they found a collection of cassette tapes, VHS recordings, diaries, each entry dated, each one methodical. David Parker Ray hadn't been experimenting. He'd been documenting. In a locked cabinet, they discovered a large white cooler. Inside, a collection of photographs. Some showed unconscious women. Others were clearly taken post-assault. None of the women were identified at the time. It became clear that this was more than a torture chamber. It was a factory, a workshop designed for complete domination, practiced to perfection over decades. And it wasn't just David. His girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, was there when Cynthia escaped. She was the one who'd panicked, dropped the keys, and allowed the chain of events to unfold. Police arrested her that same day, and under questioning, she started to talk. She told detectives there had been others, many others. She named locations, gave partial names, and said, flatly, that David Parker Ray had likely killed some of the women, but never told her where the bodies were. Back inside the trailer, detectives made one final discovery. A homemade audio cassette labeled simply, Intro Tape. The same one Cynthia had been forced to hear as she woke up chained to a table. It was over 15 minutes long. A calm voice, David Parker Ray's, described in explicit detail how the victim had been taken, what was about to happen, and how the process would unfold. It wasn't a confession. It was a manual. To this day, that tape is used in criminal justice classes across the country. Not for shock value, but to show what methodical evil looks like when it wears the mask of normalcy. That same week, FBI agents were brought in. The trailer was sealed. Excavation began on surrounding areas. Dogs were brought in, soil samples taken, maps marked with suspected dump sites. But there was a problem. There were no bodies. Not one. And so began the long, painful investigation. A hunt not just for evidence, but for answers to the question that haunts this case more than anything else. How many women went into that trailer? and never came back out. She had no time to think. Just move. Her feet throbbed against the dry, rocky dirt. Her skin was raw. Cold air wrapped around her like a shroud. The chain clattered with every step, dragging from her ankle like a cruel reminder of where she had just come from. Cynthia Vigil didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep going. Moments earlier, she had spotted keys. Just sitting there. Ray was distracted, making a phone call. And for one terrifying, fleeting moment, he had left her alone. She moved fast, hands shaking. She unlocked herself, sprinted barefoot from the trailer, completely naked, bloodied, and terrified, with a steel collar still fastened tightly around her neck. She reached a nearby mobile home, banging, screaming, begging. A local woman opened the door, and in that moment, the nightmare cracked open. 911 was called. Officers responded, and when they arrived at 513 Bass Road, they were not prepared. They expected to find a disturbed man, maybe some drugs, maybe a weapon or two. What they found was something else entirely. Inside the trailer sat a chair. Not just any chair. A custom-built gynecological chair, modified with straps, shackles, and electrical implements. Surrounding it were walls lined with whips, pulleys, surgical tools, clamps. In the corner, a video camera, a tape still inside. There were dozens of audio recordings, photographs, a handwritten journal, thousands of pages detailing acts of torture. As officers read the pages, the words began to blur into horror. Each passage colder than the last. Each detail a step further down into depravity. Then there was the map, drawn by hand, marked with remote sites across New Mexico and Arizona. Sites believed to be where bodies had been left, if, indeed, there were bodies. Because at this point, something became clear. For all the evidence of torture, for all the tools and pictures and journals, there were no confirmed bodies. Ray was arrested on the spot. He showed no panic, no rage, just quiet compliance. Behind him, his girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, was also taken into custody. She had been there for much of it, a willing accomplice. But she wasn't the only one. As police dug deeper, they found more names. One stood out, Glenda Jean Ray, David Parker Ray's own daughter. Nicknamed Jessie, she wasn't just a witness. She was, they believed, an active participant. The public watched in horror as details trickled out. This wasn't just a man who had tortured women. This was someone who had documented everything for years. He had built a system, a private world of suffering. And he'd done it with the help of others. Then came the confession tapes. Victims described being drugged, tied down, tortured for hours, sometimes days. Some escaped. Others simply vanished. Cynthia was one of the lucky ones. But police were left with a chilling dilemma. For all they had uncovered, the evidence, the confessions, the maps, they still couldn't find a single body. Was he bluffing? Or had he managed to erase the final traces of his victims? And if he had help, who else knew? The case was cracked wide open, but it was far from over. David Parker Ray was not the kind of monster that people saw coming. He didn't live in a dungeon beneath the city or prowl dark alleys after midnight. He lived in a quiet neighborhood, smiled at neighbors, worked steady jobs, and yet the crimes he committed inside that trailer were beyond comprehension. But to understand the man and the dark world he created, we have to go back. Back to the beginning. Ray was born in 1939 in Belen, New Mexico. His childhood was not peaceful. Raised in poverty, shuffled between relatives. He had little supervision and even less love. According to investigators, his early years were defined by violence. Not just around him, but inside him. As a young boy, Ray reportedly became obsessed with graphic images of bondage and torture. Not stories, not fiction, but real suffering. He collected magazines and hand-sketched disturbing fantasies in notebooks, years before he'd even touched a weapon. Later, Ray worked as a mechanic, a maintenance man, and eventually in law enforcement. Yes, he had brief connections to park rangers and security work, jobs that gave him access, authority, trust. Police would later uncover old uniforms, badges, and fake IDs in his trailer, used to lure women under false pretenses. One badge could make a woman feel safe. until it was too late. But David Parker Ray did not work alone. His girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, played a crucial role. She wasn't just present, she was involved. According to her own confessions, Cindy watched the torture. She participated in it. She helped clean up afterward. But in court, she claimed something else. That she was manipulated. That she feared Ray. That she was a victim too. The question remains, was Cindy Hendy brainwashed or evil in her own right? Her taped interviews show a woman laughing, making jokes, describing what they did, not with remorse but with detachment. And then there was Glenda Jean Ray, David's daughter, known as Jessie. She wasn't just a child raised in chaos. She was part of it. Police discovered phone records, placing her near the trailer at key times. Some survivors claim Jessie helped lure them in. One woman, in particular, told authorities she was taken to the trailer by a woman who smiled the whole time. That woman, she said, was David's daughter. But the timeline is murky, and Jessie Ray has never been fully convicted of the same crimes. Still, the idea lingers. Was this a family business? As detectives pored over the toy box's contents, the camcorder, the surgical instruments, the hand-drawn torture diagrams, they also found something else. Maps, coordinates, and journal entries. In one entry, Ray wrote cryptically about disposing of evidence at a body of water. Another entry marked a location, Elephant Butte Lake. This wasn't a small pond. This was a massive reservoir, deep, silty, and sprawling. Diving teams were sent in. Cadaver dogs brought in by boat. Nothing was ever found. But to this day, many believe that's where the bodies went. Others believe something darker. That Ray wasn't just torturing for personal pleasure. That he was filming it for clients. Theories began to swirl about a black market of torture tapes. Secret buyers. Encrypted copies sent across borders. The toy box wasn't just a prison, it was a production studio. And then, there's a final theory, one that hurts in a different way. That there are survivors out there, living, breathing, but too broken to come forward. Women who woke up in strange places, who were drugged, branded, released with no memory or too much memory. And maybe, just maybe, that was always Ray's plan. Not to kill, but to break them so deeply that they couldn't speak, so they wouldn't be believed. The deeper you dig into this case, the more you realize. The true horror might not be what was found, but what wasn't. When the walls of David Parker Ray's trailer were stripped bare by investigators, what remained wasn't just the debris of horror, but the debris of unanswered questions. Even with all the evidence, the videotapes, the detailed torture logs, the whimpering confessions from accomplices, there was one piece of the puzzle they could never quite place. Where were the bodies? This question would hang over the case like a shadow that refused to lift. Police scoured the surrounding areas, Elephant Butte Lake, the dry New Mexico desert, abandoned mines, and unmarked roads, armed with maps that Ray had scribbled himself. Some led to nowhere. Some old animal bones. None led to the remains of the countless women he claimed to have tortured, used, and discarded. Even his accomplice, Cindy Hendy, admitted to watching Ray dispose of bodies, but when asked where, her answers changed like shifting sand. She blamed trauma. She blamed blackout drinking. Some believed her. Others didn't. Authorities dredged Elephant Butte Lake, sending divers deep into the black waters. Rumors spread quickly. There were anchors with chains. Human remains were tangled in the weeds beneath the surface. But the truth? The lake swallowed all secrets. Not a single confirmed victim has ever been recovered. Worse still, there was the matter of the tapes. David Parker Ray was methodical. Every woman who entered that trailer was recorded. Some of the footage found in his possession showed women who were never identified. Women who screamed behind gags. Women who begged. Whose faces were frozen in fear, but whose names remain unknown to this day. FBI analysts reviewed hours of this footage, running faces through databases, hoping for matches. Nothing. No missing persons matched the victims shown. That opened another door of dread. Perhaps these women were never reported missing at all. Perhaps no one was even looking for them. And then there was Jessie Ray, David's daughter. Despite a paper trail of phone records, odd visits to the trailer, and one alleged witness claiming Jesse helped lure them in, she never faced serious charges. Authorities didn't have enough. But the court of public opinion? That was another matter entirely. Online forums still debate whether Jesse was a scared daughter caught in her father's web, or a full participant in his sadistic empire. Then there was a notebook found in the trailer. Pages filled with scrawled coordinates, initials, codes no one could decipher. Some believe it's a kill log. Others think it's a tracker for clients. Names of those who may have bought footage, or even women. It's never been confirmed. Even with Ray's death in 2002, just before he could begin his 224-year sentence, closure never truly arrived. The silence of the victims, the missing pieces, the vague confessions, these keep the case alive today. And every year, new women come forward. Women who believe they may have been in that trailer. Women who woke up in the desert, bruised and bleeding, memories fragmented, never knowing where they had been. Some think they escaped the toy box. Others wonder if they're just survivors of something else, something equally dark. Brain the toy box killer may be gone, but the truth he buried? Still out there, still waiting, still haunting. As the years crept forward, long after the headlines had faded and the courtroom doors had closed, the horror of David Parker Ray, the toy box killer, remained disturbingly present. Not in the form of breaking news, but in whispers, in nightmares, in theories that refused to die. Because for all that was uncovered, there's still far more that wasn't. The official victim count remains uncertain. Some say 14. Others say 60. Ray himself suggested it was higher. Much higher. In recordings and interviews, he alluded to having perfected the art of disposal, of leaving no trace. And when a man who spent decades building a torture chamber beneath the surface of normal life says he's buried bodies where no one will find them, there's every reason to believe him. And yet, we never did. Some believe Ray was part of a larger underground network, a ring of traffickers and sadists exchanging victims like currency. This theory, while largely speculative, finds footing in the disturbing catalog of items found inside his home. Dozens of video recordings labeled with dates, but no names, photos of women bound in unfamiliar locations, and letters written in codes authorities still haven't cracked. Then there's the question of whether David Parker, Ray, acted alone. Officially, yes, he had help. Cindy Hindy, his daughter Jessie Ray, and sometimes Roy Yancey. But others speculate there were more. Regular visitors. People who knew what was happening in that trailer and chose silence over justice. Why? Fear. Power. Or maybe, just maybe, they shared his appetite for pain. These theories deepen when you consider the lost evidence. At least 2 videotapes disappeared from the crime scene before they could be processed. And there are whispers, unconfirmed but persistent, that one of those tapes showed a well-known local figure participating in the torture. It's a rumor the FBI never confirmed, but they never denied it either. And then there are the survivors, women who escaped and kept their stories buried for decades. Women who woke up on the side of a road, miles from town, with no memory of how they got there. Some were dismissed, others were disbelieved. But today, in online survivor forums and cold case advocacy networks, their stories are finally being heard, finally being pieced together. Each new survivor adds another jagged tile to the mosaic of Ray's darkness. One described a cold voice playing from a speaker, matching Ray's infamous audio tape, to explain what would happen next. Another remembered being shown a Polaroid of herself, unconscious, with medical instruments nearby. A third claimed she woke up in an RV surrounded by mannequins posed like corpses until she realized some of them weren't mannequins at all. And perhaps the most disturbing legacy of all, the trailer. The actual toy box was eventually dismantled and stored away in a police impound yard. For a while, there were talks of turning it into a criminal exhibit. But how do you showcase something so evil without glorifying it? How do you display torture devices to the public without inviting obsession? So the trailer remains sealed, hidden from view, a symbol of the evil that masqueraded behind an ordinary face in an ordinary town. We may never know how many women walked through that door and never came out. We may never find the graves David Parker Ray left behind. But what we do know is this. Monsters like him don't always live in shadows. Sometimes they live next door. They smile. They shake your hand. And behind closed doors, they build hell from wood and steel and call it a toy box. If this story chilled you, if it made you pause and wonder how many cases like this remain buried beneath the headlines, subscribe to Dark Trail Files. We follow the trails most fear to walk, uncovering the truth one case at a time. Your support helps these forgotten voices be heard. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us every week as we explore the darkest corners of true crime. Because sometimes, the trail goes deeper than anyone imagined.